Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Pre-Race. Julia, we only have MotoGP this weekend. No other forms of motorsports. Just the two of us for MotoGP action in Malaysia. Now, of course, we're on the air. Big thank you for Julia for making the time to be on the air for us this weekend. And a big thank you to our Patreon subscribers, Colin Show, Marc, Robin, David, and Matthew for investing in the Grid Network. Really appreciate all your investment. Hit the link in the video description. Also, you can do buy me a coffee if you want to buy a cup of coffee for any member of the Grid Network team, including Julia and everyone. And social media, follow us throughout social media, and especially hit the bell icon, subscribe to us right here on YouTube. Now, Julia, we got, as I mentioned, very light weekend of racing, MotoGP, but what a start to this race weekend. 11 points is now the difference between Pecco Bagnaia and Jorge Martin after the sprint race. One of the big things, Martin came home in second place in the sprint race behind Alex Marquez. Pecco Bagnaia, third place. He did lead early on. I was thinking maybe he's going to get this race win, but that did not occur. Came on third. He is starting on the pole for tomorrow's race, so Pecco has to be feeling pretty good, but I got to ask you, which rider do you feel is more likely to lead the points after the Grand Prix race weekend?
It's very hard to say, to be honest, because I said the difference is so margin right now that anything can happen. I mean, it looks like it's gonna be still play around Jorge Martin and Pico Bagnaia in terms of that it had to be some kind of mechanical failure or a crash for them not to finish the race in higher positions. So they will be one of them would lead for sure. But otherwise, honestly, they were the top riders today, even though they were all compromised by Alex Marquez, who's feeling great in Malaysia. And his rivals also, including Jorge, Pecco, and the others, think that he will be right in the middle of the title fight tomorrow. So it's gonna play around Alex Marquez also, and we gotta say that today's pace wasn't definitely good for Pecco because Enea Bassini was really close to him, and to be honest, he had plenty of opportunities to overtake him, but he didn't do it. You could see that he was super close. He had many opportunities if he wanted to. Enea would have just overtake Pekka and go for Jorge, but he didn't, obviously. We could see that. So it also showed that Pekka didn't have a great pace in this sprint. We'll see tomorrow. We'll see what Ducati is gonna change for tomorrow for him to fight more with Jorge. And we'll see how Alex Marquez is gonna ride tomorrow because he will be a big factor in the title fight.
Yes, Alex Marquez is going to be a big factor tomorrow. I think the pace he was showing at the race was really something else. The starting lineup right there. Now, one the people mentioned, Enea Bastianini, he's going to be up there. The competition we saw for Pecco and Martin were essentially the other Ducati riders. Alex Marquez, as we mentioned, won the race, going to be a factor, held off Martin for that long battle for second place. But Enea Bastianini, he's up there. He's not towards the back. Of course, he's been having bad luck, injuries this year. One of the big surprises, Robert Jones from Crash.net reported that Paulo Ciabatti told MotoGP that potentially Nea Bastianini's place in the factory team is not 100% certain, potentially open the door for Jorge Martin. We'll put the link in the video description to the article from Crash.net's Robert Jones. Are you surprised about this rumor, and do you believe Bastianini's performance has been a letdown or some more because of the injuries and everything?
To be honest, I'm not surprised because we know that the contracts in MotoGP are just an illusion, to be honest, and we've seen that plenty of times that they're kind of an illusion for, especially for the riders, and they give no guarantee and no safety for them. To be honest, And it should be looked at, to be honest. And this is another reason to create riders union, but this is a whole topic for even another episode probably, because it's very deep. But to be honest, from this side, I am not surprised, and also considering the fact that Enea has been injured so much, and then he hasn't been, uh, his performance wasn't that top like he was expected to perform before that, because he was expected to be the biggest rival for Pecco all the time. And then there was this injury, then he didn't do that great. So it could make the bosses of the Ducati Lenovo team to think that maybe he won't be as good as Jorge Martin would have been. Obviously, Pecco Bagnaia is like, when he was asked about that, he was like, "Oh, it wouldn't be fair to Enea because he was injured and stuff. Enea is a good teammate." It kind of reminds us of the discussion was when I think it was right before pandemic, or if Valtteri Bottas was gonna leave Mercedes, when he was a teammate for Lewis Hamilton for such a long time, and Lewis was also discussing that they're good friends. He was the best teammate he could have had, and they wouldn't be fair and stuff. But of course, he has Lewis. Couldn't have all the authority over that decision, and just like Pecco can't now. So it's gonna be the boss's decisions in the end. He could be a good teammate, it could be not fair, but in the end, it's their decision, and Jorge Martin is performing. Jorge Martin is the biggest danger to take away Pecco's title, but also to take away Ducati Lenovo's title, because the rider title is also kind of theirs. He was their rider, this team's rider, not only the Ducati as a factory. So they also may take that into consideration. Jorge Martin is doing extremely well in those rust sprints and races, proving that he's a great and talented athlete. So I kind of get why he would say that, and why would they consider switching Nea Bastianini and Jorge Martin, but it's hard to say if they're actually gonna do that or they're just talking, because they're also talking that there is no way they're gonna sign Marquez because they don't need him. That they don't need Marquez. They have plenty of talented riders, and in the end, Marquez is coming to Grassini next to his brother on a Ducati. So this is really hard. Just like in racing, it's hard to say what's gonna happen, who's gonna win. Just like this, it's a word of business, and in the end, they're gonna decide, and then we'll see the results.
It's going to be interesting, and I think you brought up a great point. Here in the United States, drivers' contracts are seen as very much binded, where MotoGP, other forms, is almost an illusion where they could just, we're not going to honor it no more. So for Nea Bastianini, the Ducati team, considering what he did last year with Grassini, I was anticipating he's going to get at least a couple wins. I've been really surprised that Bastianini had just not had that great of a season. The injuries, of course, don't help. But when you have a team like Pecco and Jorge Martin's performance this year, just stellar. I mean, it's been really hard to beat almost each and every week. Can't fault Ducati for looking at Enea Bastianini. Excuse me, Jorge Martin to maybe replace Bastianini. Now, in the sprint race, as I mentioned, one of the big things we saw there as we pull up the results again, we saw Pecco he was leading out front. Looked like he had a pretty good lead, and especially when Alex Marquez was battling Jorge Martin, I thought he's going to ride off, get away, take the win. Not the case. Here comes Alex Marquez to get the win. Then we had Jorge Martin come home third place, but he was even having to battle Bastianini, his teammate, for position during the sprint race. For the Grand Prix, do you anticipate a different strategy between Pecco and potentially for Martin, since it's going to be a much longer race?
um, I mean, it's hard to say. I didn't anticipate anticipate the change of strategy, especially for Pecco and the Ducati team, the Lenovo, because something didn't work today, and they expected they could get a win. Pecco took a pole in the end, of course. The qualifying was also another drama, but he took that pole in the end, and he kind of did not use that, considering that Alex Marquez won the race. So someone who just jumped off when technically races, we would like to see races between Pecco Bagnaia and Jorge Martin, and we've seen the contact fight between them today, but the winner was different. So it also makes a whole different case that it's not that easy to get points, or for example for Pecco to grow the lead in the championship over Jorge Martin when he's not winning, and someone else is just taking a victory like Alex Marquez today, and in the end Jorge Martin even finished the race in front of him. So I do anticipate change of strategy here, and it's hard to say for Jorge Martin because we could say that maybe he's gonna back down a little bit to save the tires and try to think more of a strategy. But we also know that if Pekka is gonna change something for tomorrow and it's gonna work really well, he may just leave the whole grid behind him if someone will try to save the tires too much, or they will try to stay behind a little bit, and then this gap between Pekka, if he's gonna start good and right away, maybe just too big to catch up. So I think for them, they're gonna watch mostly for each other. Maybe not even for Alex Marquez. Of course, they would like to win, but more than for Alex Marquez, for example, and Brad Binder, they're gonna look out for each other and what the other is gonna do. More than looking at Alex Marquez, if he's gonna ride away, I think they would like to play it safe for the championship, not just go hot-headed and straight for Alex Marquez and, in the risk of a crash of riding too aggressively to catch up with him, for example. Because today he also had a pretty nice lead. They're gonna focus more on each other. But then again, something may change tomorrow, and maybe Pecco Bagnaia who leads, and maybe Jorge Martin who leads, and that just makes it more interesting for us.
It makes it more interesting, and as you mentioned, picking and choosing your battles. Alex Marquez really used up Jorge Martin in that battle for second place, then went out. Definitely, I think it's going to be something where the two riders are going to be watching for each other. Where are they in comparison? Great opportunity for the other riders, of course. That includes some of our past champions. In the sprint race, Fabio Quartararo, of course, one of the past champions. He just struggled. He dropped down to 19th after that first lap. Horrible opening corners where you're going left, right, left again. Marc Marquez crashed out. He said the tires let him down. In the Grand Prix, we're going to have Fabio Quartararo. He's going to be starting over in the 11th place position. And then, of course, Marc Marquez, 20th. Do you anticipate we'll see a big emphasis on the start again? Or was that mainly just because of the sprint race? And will tires be a big issue here at Malaysia?
I would say that if Marcus said that the tires were a problem for him, then they're also gonna be a problem tomorrow, considering that just the pace and the performance of Honda bike that we've seen the whole season. We know that Honda's bike is pretty horrible. That's I think we can call it. That's why Marcus is leaving the team in the end. Of course, he could get some positions. He could get podiums even this season, but it's still not a bike that is perfectly rideable. And I've seen that today it wasn't. If we see it over all the Honda riders, because the higher in the sprint race for the start was Jean Mir, but he also crashed, as we know. And then there's Taka Nakagami. Iker Lecuona is replacing Alex Rins. He's a Honda rider in World Superbikes, which are completely different bikes. So we can't actually imagine that he would do amazing stuff on this bike. I mean, Iker Lecuona did very well in Assen on the Repsol Honda bike. We gotta mention that he's been really doing really great. he was on the way to getting points when he's from Superbike, so and he hasn't had sat on the MotoGP bike in a long time. But the Honda bike gave up on him. The Repsol Honda bike just gave up, and he had a mechanical issue, and he had to retire. I think it was 2 or 3 laps to go, which was a really big shame for him. Today he was just happy that he finished in front of Alvaro Bautista, who's the world superbike champion on Ducati, and he was unbeatable. The season world superbikes, he's beatable here. But we've seen that the Honda riders are actually this weekend taking more of the last places on the grid. So this is kind of a problem for Fabio. We know that he's been struggling with the Yamaha this season. He could do a pretty good stuff with it still. Really, it's respectable that he could get really high positions sometimes. But it's still a struggle. Yamaha's bike is also not very good. Generally, Japanese manufacturers have problem now in a fight against Europeans like MotoGP, for example, KTM, Aprilia, and Ducati. This is no struggle for them. So I don't think we're gonna see Fabio Quartararo and Marquez really fighting extremely well tomorrow. Maybe not for top 10, but Marquez on the start, to be honest, gained up really many positions. I think it was just 7 in a span of 1.5 lap. So he was looking good for a run, but it was course, it was the sprint. So he was playing everything on one side, one card. He just went away. For the Grand Prix, it may not work.
Yeah, for the Grand Prix, it may not work when you do that. It's going to be much longer. The Malaysian course, some of those high speeds, straightaways, and the cornering, it's going to be something else. Very excited for this race. And of course, one of the riders, Marc Bischecki, third place in the points. He's really starting to sort of be out of it unless the top two in the points, Martin and Pecco Bagnaia, start having like the worst luck, not finishing the race, and he goes on and starts winning. Overall, though, we know for Bischecki, it seems like this has been a pretty positive year for him. The VR46 Mooney team, the Ducati equipment has been paying off. Do you believe this weekend Bischecki can contend for the win, considering how he did in the sprint?
Uh, he could be a player in that, of course. I would never exclude that. But after the sprint, I would say that the bigger contenders are still Jorge Martin, Pecco Bagnaia fighting for a championship, and then Alex Marquez, who has a great pace. Even Enea Bastianini was doing really good, just like Brad Binder, who's also one of the greatest now secondly riders in the terms of that he's one of the few who can actually mess with Ducati and take up some places from them in this group. Like, we didn't see Mark Vizicki too much, so of course longer race the Grand Prix is a different talk than the sprint, but in terms of a pace, just those 5 riders, especially Marc Marquez, Jorge Martin. I mean, Pecco Bagnaia and Enea Bastianini were kind of a tandem in that terms, because instead Bastianini definitely could overtake Bagnaia, but he did not. And then there was Brad Binder who got close, thanks to that. But yeah, I still wouldn't exclude him if something's gonna happen tomorrow. But the bigger players for the victory are definitely today's top 3.
Yeah, today's top three, I think, are going to be the bigger players as well too. But one of the riders you mentioned, Brad Binder, both KTM's up there, pretty good sprint day for Jack Miller and Brad Binder. Fifth place for Binder, sixth place for Jack Miller. So overall, were you surprised by Jack Miller's performance, considering this year has not been that great for him? He's down in 10th place and just has not, in general, been able to match Brad Binder.
Considering his pace this season, in that in many situations he was not able to match the pace of Brad Binder, I wouldn't say I'm surprised. It's sometimes really kind of sad to see that, considering that we could have another rider to mess up a little bit, at least, with the Ducati plans and another manufacturer on top, another rider of a different manufacturer. But considering that Rodbinder has been performing better on the KTM bike, it's not really surprising that he's doing better and that he was more in front. Which is really sad for Jack Miller because he also had good moments in KTM at the beginning. I think, especially if I remember well, and I think many of us thought that it's gonna go well for him. It did not go that well. So I wouldn't say I'm too surprised. It's a shame. Uh, it would be really good if he could perform better tomorrow. It would be more of a fight in the track, but I still don't know if he would be able to match Brad Binder. But it's of course also possible.
Very, very possible. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the Grand Prix of Malaysia tomorrow at the Simpang circuit. Julia, it's now time to ask the question. That's I think the hardest for everyone because nobody got Alex Marquez correct. Pick a winner for the sprint race. I mean, excuse me. Yeah, for the sprint race, nobody scored a point. Alex Marquez shocked everybody. Just about everyone went with Jorge Martin. For the Grand Prix now, who are you think is going to win the race?
It's such a hard question because there are so many factors that could play up tomorrow. Pecco with different settings. So Jorge, for example, going in two-headed. Alex making a mistake. Uh, I love choosing the winners for racing. That's why I never do betting for money. But to be honest, because why not? I'm gonna go for Alex Marquez because he had a good pace and he showed much strength today, and that he's not afraid of harsh fighting with Jorge Martin, for example, because it was a really, really close fight between them. In one moment, it was really, really close of him touching the rear wheel of Jorge Martin, so he's
Mhm.
not afraid of that. And maybe he can play a little, just like the other riders said. He may be a big factor tomorrow and mess up with the championship fight, even. Hopefully, not too much because we wouldn't like him to crash out one of the riders who are fighting for the championship, of course. But let's go for him. It's gonna be at least a little bit more interesting.
It's going to be interesting. I have to agree. I think Alex Marquez has to be one of the favorites for tomorrow's race. But I think the rider I'm going to go with, just because I feel, as you mentioned earlier, Pecco, Martin, they're going to be watching how each other's racing. They're going to be picking and choosing their battles. I think the one rider could capitalize is going to be the KTM. Brad Binder, I think, is going to win this race tomorrow. It'll be really interesting to see. I think he needs to have a good, clean start just to be up towards the front as the field starts to spread out and hopefully get away with the win. But it's going to be very hard to always beat those two Ducatis of Jorge Martin and Pecco Bagnaia. Julia, thank you so much for your time as always. And of course, we encourage everyone, be sure to comment as well. So, one of the big things in the video description, you could do buy me a coffee or even Patreon, invest in the Grid Network through that. That way we could continue to grow for especially 2024 and hit the bell icon, subscribe to us right here on YouTube. So one of the big things we encourage everyone, check out the links in the video description. There's also a link to Julia's channel as well, Julia's podcast, all about motorcycles. We highly encourage everyone to check it out. Once again, thank you for tuning in to Grid Life Pre-Race. For Julia, I'm Joe. We'll see you next time and enjoy the races. Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.